Yes, people, welcome back to GNA TV and Chelsea Fan TV. I hope you guys are well wherever it is that you may be around the world. Ben Jacobs is with us again for some Chelsea transfer news as well. We have got a short time, but we need to get stuck into it. But before we move forward, let's cue the intro. Yes, people, welcome back to GNA TV and Chelsea Fan TV. Guys, please make sure that we're smashing them likes. Subscribe if you're new to the channel as well. We do have Ben Jacobs back on the show today. Ben, how are you, mate?
Good to be here. Busy times. I think we'll all be glad when the window shuts and we can get a good night's sleep. That's certainly the perspective of journalists.
100%, mate, 100%. I bet you just can't wait till that window closes and then you can just relax and watch football and not be asked 21 questions from about, a million different people. So, yeah, 100%. Let's move into it, though. Obviously, Chelsea are busy at the moment. Obviously, there's still talks in and around Fafana and de Jong, which we're going to get into a bit later on in the show. But I want us to talk about outgoings at the moment at Chelsea. Obviously, Timo Werner looks like he's going to complete his move to Leipzig. We were told initially, Ben, that it was around 25 million euros, and now we're being told that it's 16 million euros plus add-ons from, what's his name, Platty something, Sky Sports. I can't remember his full name. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that, and what have you heard on the Timo Werner stance of things? Has he froze? He's froze. Ben Jacobs has frozen. Can you hear me now?
I think we just had a little internet outage, didn't we?
So it's asked you about Timo Werner. Yeah, can you hear me now? You all good?
Yes, I left as quickly as Timo Werner wants to leave Chelsea, some would say. But in all seriousness, I heard the question. So Werner's gone. It's a good deal all round. The fee, as I understand it, is a little bit cheaper than was first reported. Fees are always disputed, though, which I think is quite an interesting point to make. So don't judge them too religiously. Rafinha is a great example of that. As an aside on Rafinha, if you heard the Athletic's excellent interview with the Leeds owner, he said that the deal was pretty much the same as Chelsea offered Barcelona. Say it was 20 million euros less, and both sides still sticking to those positions. So fees are really tough for journalists to nail exactly. And one of the reasons for that is because the buyer and the seller want to put out something that suits them, because they've got to continue working in the market. So if you always give the accurate fee, you may be giving intel that you don't want your competitors to know. But my understanding is that the fee is lower than was first reported, around about 20 million euros. And I think that there's been some friction for quite some time between Werner and Tuchel. So it's a move that makes a lot of sense. He had a great spell at Leipzig before joining Chelsea and believes that he should have more game time. My understanding here in terms of the backstory is actually more down to the old regime and the Tuchel relationship than anything the new regime have done or could do. And by that, I mean, when he was on the bench for the FA Cup final against Liverpool, Tuchel said afterwards he didn't come on because he was injured. And Werner, as I understand it, disputes that and believes that he should have played in the game and was fit enough. And I think that escalated a relationship that's been frosty really for the large part of the summer period. And from Werner's point of view, he's comfortable at Leipzig. He knows that he's going to score goals there. It's a good move all round. It reminds me of Lukaku to some extent, because Chelsea have been forced to kind of take a player that wants out of the club and eventually settle for financial terms anyway that maybe they wouldn't have wanted, but it offloads a player from the wage bill. It clears up some squad space and it allows them to focus on trying to bring in an attacker. So I do think in the end, it's win-win when a player doesn't want to be there, when he doesn't relish the manager's either system or have that personal relationship. At that point, you have to rectify the situation. Otherwise, it can lead to bad blood, poor mood, even potentially divided dressing rooms as well. So his departure benefits Chelsea. Maybe they would have wanted a bit more money, but now he's gone. Yeah. They can focus once again on incomings in that area.
100%. I don't think Timo Werner's had the greatest of two seasons at Chelsea. I don't actually think he suits our style of football as well. And ultimately, I don't think we play to his strengths. He will go and score goals in Germany. And that's the thing I think he will do. And to be honest, good luck to him. I do think that we need to find players more versatile that can play in the way that Tuchel wants to play. You look at Sterling, I think he gives us that. But staying on outgoings quickly at the moment, Callum Hudson-Odoi, obviously he travelled to Goodison Park with the squad and then didn't, and then he wasn't even on the bench. And now we're being told that he's potentially forcing a move as well. It's sort of come out of the blue a little bit. Like, I don't know if something's happened in the midst of that period or what, but all of a sudden it's looking like Southampton are entertaining it. I've heard Juventus also in it as well. I just want to get an understanding of what your thoughts are, what you've heard on the Callum Hudson-Odoi saga.
So Dortmund and Southampton are the two that have really pushed for Callum Hudson-Odoi. That's my understanding. And from Dortmund's point of view, they would be interested in a loan deal. I think Southampton actually are open to both. Naturally, people are saying Leicester because they're kind of hopeful that that knocks off a little bit of the value from the Fafana deal and allows Chelsea to go above 80 million. But as we saw with Levi Colwill and Marc Cucurella, there's just as much chance that if Leicester want Callum Hudson-Odoi, it will still be treated as separate. So there were some internal discussions about whether Hudson-Odoi might be factored into the rejected bids for Fofana, but they were straight cash bids. And that potentially tells you that Leicester at the moment are looking at other positions. If they keep Maddison, for example, and they were to sell Fofana, they would want a centre-back. And that's the kind of irony in it all, that I think, talking to sources, that Leicester, if they'd have come first to any negotiation over Fofana before the Brighton deal, would have been asking for Levi Colwill, and he would have been an asset. Whereas with Callum Hudson-Odoi, because he's been patchy, even with potential at the age of 21, it's not a given that Leicester will move. Their interest in Callum Hudson-Odoi, as I've reported before, is very much historical, and it will be Chelsea reigniting it and saying, do you want him again now? And I think the club are, and Rodgers specifically, 50-50 on whether that would be of interest to them, either with Fofana or without. And the reason for that is obviously because you've got a player that only played 15 Premier League games last season and scored 1 goal, scored 2 goals the season before. And in over, I think, 130 odd Chelsea appearances, although he scored 20 times, which is okay for a player in his position, as I recall, those that actually have internets to hand and can Google it can correct me if I'm wrong, but only 4 of those goals have been in the Premier League. And what Leicester want is to focus on the Premier League. And if they're to bring in a player that is in that position, they need to be more of a threat, not just with assists, but goals as well. So it's a possibility that Leicester are in the mix, but there's a number of clubs pushing hard. And at the moment, I think that Hudson-Odoi has just rethought about whether Chelsea is either his long-term home or whether he needs to go out on loan if it is, and then come back and have a pathway. Because it's not nice traveling up on the first game of the season, going through a pre-season, getting in all of the kit, doing the same routine as everybody else. And then when the side goes up, not being a part of it, it feels a bit demoralizing to a young player. So I do think that he'll go somewhere, but my understanding is that he hasn't decided where, which tells you that if he hasn't decided where, this notion of Leicester money plus Callum Hudson-Odoi cannot be that advanced, because the player himself is talking to multiple clubs.
Interesting. I actually, as a Chelsea fan, think that Callum Hudson-Odoi does need a move. I think it would be better for him for his career. I just don't see the opportunities there for him at Chelsea at the moment. And when you look at, obviously, Timo Werner leaving, Hakim Ziyech, who seems to be trying to force himself out the door, still not left yet as well. Chelsea are ultimately going to strengthen in that area, and I think they will concentrate on that area. And obviously, one of the other sort of players that I wanted to talk about that's came out of the woods recently is Wilfried Zaha. I know a lot of people in the chat are asking about Wilfried Zaha. Is this actually true? Chelsea actually interested in the player? What are your thoughts on that one?
Zaha will divide opinion, won't he? I think that he fits neatly into the Thomas Tuchel system, only 29 years of age, and seemingly Chelsea have been given some encouragement that if they were to bid for him, there would be a deal available on the table. And from Chelsea's perspective, when you look at the actual numbers, what you see, even from his opening game, is a high volume of dribbling, a huge amount of confidence on the ball, but he gives away the football on a number of occasions. And I think that when Chelsea play intricate football around the box, he would have to be more consistent, because the danger otherwise is that if you dribble into trouble, if you foul, and he does commit a fair amount of fouls as well, then you allow sides to break quickly on the counter attack. Obviously, from the perspective of a foul, they'd have to take the free kick quickly when you're out of shape. But if you dribble into trouble, so Zaha is kind of an interesting one for me, because I would see his game changing at Chelsea. When he plays now, he has to kind of take games by the scruff of the neck and be the creative impetus. But the beauty of joining a club like Chelsea is that the burden is alleviated in terms of creativity and attack-minded players. So you can actually put your head up a bit more and take less risks. And what becomes important is less that dribbling and that flair and raw talent as an individual, and more about that relationship with others, and particularly your progressive passing and your delivery. And that's also why Ronaldo would fit at Chelsea as well, because again, the burden is alleviated. So I think that Chelsea will assess this one. And I think that Zaha in particular, as I understand it, would be very keen on a Chelsea move, but one of a number of targets. And unlike some of the others that Chelsea are chasing, they would get, I think, quite a bargain here, because he only got 1 year left on his contract. So that's the other difference between Zaha and other targets. What we're seeing with Fafana, we saw it with Cucurella, we saw it in the early part of the delete negotiations, is that Chelsea are coming back. It's ambitious, it's aggressive, but at times they're going up by increments of 5 to 7 million a day in offers. And if you place 2 or 3 offers, whether verbally or formal, you become the club that is just bidding and bidding and bidding. And then what does the seller think? They view Chelsea as someone that will always go up. So if you're Leicester and Fofana, you could almost say, well, let's just keep rejecting. Even if they make us an 80 million quid offer, we'll reject it. And then they'll come back with another offer. And if they don't, we'll come back to them 5 days later and say, actually, we've had second thoughts. We'll accept it now. And then Leicester have got win-win. So with Zaha, it's a bit different, because Chelsea have actually got a bit of control over the negotiation if they choose to proceed. And I think he's quite a low-risk signing, both financially, Premier League experience, may not wow the fan base in the same way that Fafana and De Jong does, but now Werner's gone and Ziyech's future is still up there for debate. And I wasn't that impressed, by the way, with Havertz either in the opening game of the season. And Broja's still young. So if you get a creative-minded player that can be versatile and give you goals and assists, even at the age of 29, I actually think in a low-key way, Zaha to Chelsea makes a ton of sense.
Is there anyone else in them in that forward line position that Chelsea have on their list? Because obviously we know that Werner's going, Cho could potentially go on loan. Ziyech, like you said, is up in the air. We were, you're getting to the near end of the market as well. And like you said rightly, values of players start to increase because they have them in pre-seasons, or they're starting seasons with these players, so they're not going to sell their players cheaply. Other than Wilfried Zaha, have you heard of any other potential forwards that Chelsea could be looking at?
We know about Aubameyang, and the interest is loose from Chelsea's end. And I think if they could get him on loan, that would make a great deal of sense. He scored, though, for Barcelona 24 hours ago in the so-called Gamba. And at the same time, I think that there's a lot of competition for the player. It wouldn't remotely surprise me if Manchester United enter that race as well very seriously, because he's probably surplus to requirements solely because they need to offload him from the wage bill. So that is still one to watch. The link has some substance to it. Chelsea are obviously talking to Barcelona about a number of different players. They're speaking about the possibility of De Jong. We know that they are negotiating around Alonso, which is pretty much done. So a name like Aubameyang is going to come up, and it is one to watch. But as I've already said, in the what's called Joan Gamper Trophy, Barca won 6-0, and Dembele scored. He was supposed to leave. He did leave. He re-signed. Lewandowski scored. He wasn't supposed to be able to join. They agreed a deal. Aubameyang scored. He's supposed to leave. De Jong scored. He's supposed to leave. So not to read too much into it, but what we do know is that when the Gamper happens, it's as much a symbol and a presentation as it is a match in itself. And players, therefore, that are completely surplus to requirements or are imminently outgoing get told not to turn up, And we saw that with a few in the build up to that game. And then with De Jong and with Aubameyang, they were there. They were part of the presentation. They were used to build excitement ahead of the new season, and they both scored. So that tells you that Barcelona are not 100% fixed on either of them being an outgoing. Even if they end up happening, there's still a fair amount of negotiation to make that happen. But he's obviously one to watch as well in terms of more of a out and out forward rather than only a kind of winger. And Zaha is the other one. And I know that some people have kind of linked Vardy and a late bid. I don't see too much in that. I think Leicester are absolutely adamant that Jamie Vardy will be staying at the football club, and something massive late in the window would have to change. Vardy's big chance really to get a move away from Leicester and regular Champions League football was Arsenal a few years back, and he chose to stay at Leicester. And I don't think that Vardy now, especially because he's retired from international football, so he doesn't need Champions League football or the move for the money. He's on good wages at Leicester, or his family to break into the England setup. He's a club player, and at Leicester he's going to be starting a great deal of games, whereas if he joins Chelsea he becomes a squad player. And if that happens, therefore, and he ends up less integral, he could almost end up, I know it's kind of a bad example because it wouldn't be this extreme, but he could almost end up in a worst case scenario as a Danny Drinkwater rather than a Kante or a Ben Chilwell. And I think at this stage in his career, it would go through his mind as well. So it's not impossible, because Chelsea are obviously just looking at these mid-30s players that can be band-aid signings, but I've not heard, from talking at the Leicester side anyway, to any real substance whatsoever between a Chelsea approach or even an interest in Jamie Vardy, whereas Aubameyang, the interest is more genuine. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that one.
Yeah, it's very telling with obviously the Goodison game and the Tuchel conference after that. He made it clear that, and we're going to talk about De Jong in a bit, that midfield potentially might not be the priority, and that the forward line is something that they're probably pushing more at the moment, once they obviously maybe sort out the centre-back area, which we're going to get to in a bit as well. But it's a weird one for me, because I don't really think, as a Chelsea fan, it's really interesting, and I don't think because we're lacking the information, we don't really know where we're going at the moment. Like, are we going to are we going to buy Fafana? Are we not? Are we going to concentrate on the strikers sort of area? Are we not going to do that? We're going to go into mid. Like, it's like everything's up in the air. And I feel like what Chelsea are doing at the moment is, I feel like they're probably doing what they have done throughout this whole window, is they've probably got their fingers in many pies, and they're keeping as many doors open and trying to see where they can push certain deals a lot further forward or quicker than maybe others, etc. And there's just so many areas for me that I still feel that we need to address. I don't think we're going to get them all done in this one window, but ultimately I think it's about now being smart and providing Tuchel with players to strengthen what I feel would probably be the centre-back area and the forward line, even though the midfield, it seems to be a key for most Chelsea fans, should I say, as well. But moving into the defence area, obviously I would have thought we would sorted out two centre-backs already as Chelsea. And we bring in Koulibaly, we have Thiago Silva, who was always speaking about a number two, another centre-back coming in, potentially a third centre-back coming in as well. Levi Colwill's gone to, obviously, has gone on to Brighton now because of the Cucurella deal, which in theory you could probably treat Cucurella as an option as one of the back three, which he can be used in that sort of position. But Fafana, obviously you're a Leicester fan, aren't you? If I understand, you're a Leicester fan yourself. So Fafana one's interesting because I didn't watch the game, but I read a lot after the game, and it's from what we've been told. Obviously, you drew the game 2-2, didn't you, with Brentford? Fafana seemed to have stormed off down the tunnel, and the rest of the Leicester team were walking around clapping, the fans and whatever. But apparently, he was very upset and not happy, and is pretty much just not himself. I mean, obviously, the Chelsea interest looms in and around Leicester. Leicester have made it clear. I think even Brendan Rodgers has made it clear that they don't want to sell Fafana. He's like their price asset at the moment. I can see this being a big week in this whole saga. Where are we with this all at the moment with Chelsea and Leicester and Fafana?
I think in loose terms, the clubs are apart in valuation by roughly 10 million. Chelsea 2 bids rejected, but they're not giving up. There's a growing confidence they're preparing a third bid. As I said before, if Leicester know that Chelsea are going to keep coming, they may keep rejecting, because they can always turn around if a fourth bid doesn't come, a fifth bid doesn't come, and say, well, actually, we're prepared to negotiate now. So that means that Leicester have got the control. and Chelsea are likely to have to pay a world record fee for a defender to get Wesley Fofana. And I've said that all along, that it will be a Harry Maguire style fee, whether it's 80 million, 85 million, and it looks like straight cash. So there's a possibility as the number gets higher that it becomes a ton of cash plus a player to get it to Leicester's valuation. That has been loosely discussed internally, as we've already touched upon. But generally, Leicester want the cash. And if they are to take a player, someone like Callum Hudson-Odoi doesn't replace Wesley Fofana. And there's concerns at Leicester that they're not going to be able to find a quality replacement at this short notice. And that is another aspect to the deal as well. So Leicester are only going to sell on their terms, but that is still an improvement on the previous situation, which was not for sale. So officially not for sale, but sources continue to suggest that regardless of Rodgers' position of not wanting to sell his assets or needing to, the board would be open to a sale if a number and a structure is hit. And I use the word structure because I think during the window, social media in particular looks at the number and they say, well, we're bidding again, it's going to be 75. We're bidding again, it's going to be 80 and so on. But the number is only one aspect. The structure is equally as important. So if, for example, Chelsea bid 85 million, and just for the sake of it, it's 75 million in 4 installments with 10 million of add-ons. And as a big club, Chelsea can be more speculative with the add-ons because they can make them Champions League specific, Premier League winning specific, the kind of things that Leicester can't factor into a standard deal. And then Leicester may see 85, but they might realise that 10 million of those add-ons are not particularly likely. So they may then construe it as 75 in 4 installments. And then what are the odds of Chelsea winning the Champions League? I would have thought 20-1 off the top of my head. So then it's 20-1 to get potentially those 10 million of add-ons. Whereas if the bid is 70 million plus 5, so only 75 million total, but 5 is in 50 appearances for Chelsea in all competitions, and 70 is in, just for the sake of it, to give you these two extremes, 1 installment, then that can be more preferable. So don't always look at the total, look at the structure as well. It is equally as important when you table a bid. So this isn't just a race to get to 80 or 85. And this is why Chelsea may try a little bit lower than 80 million, but with a more preferential structure, and see whether that's beneficial to Leicester, especially knowing that they need finances now. So the situation with Fafana is Chelsea are going to keep trying probably between now and the end of the window, but they're never going to say that officially because they can't paint this picture of just we're bidding. Otherwise, Leicester will say, great, we'll just hold out until your 10th bid. And then by that stage, it will be sky high. There has to be some gamesmanship. And Chelsea are developing this relationship amongst their competitors as Cucurella, 52.5 became 62 million overnight. And then Fafana became 62 million, as I understand it, for the opening bid, and then in excess of 70 million by a little bit for the second bid. And then if the third bid is 80, then the increments that they're leaping up are 7 to 10 million, really in the space of 24 hours. And that's not the look you want when you're negotiating. So it wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea just take a breath here. And with the next offer, it could even be tactical. And they could go a little bit lower than that 80 million and even more like 75, just to make it clear that they're not just going to throw 85 million. They're going to try their luck. And then from there, you sort of see how the deal progresses. And the other thing is that, as I've said many times, and I know people don't always like the context, but it's important in a transfer window because it's way more complicated and with finesse, that when you bid, you are sometimes forced to place a formal offer because the club does not engage. And Leicester did that with Newcastle, with Maddison, and also Chelsea with the first Fofana bid. But then as it progresses, you get engagement. And that's where it's heading to at the moment, which is why Chelsea are growing in confidence that not for sale is not as genuine as Leicester have implied. Then it becomes verbal. When it is verbal, you band around figures. And that's where there's grey area over was it an offer, wasn't it an offer? And often the buyer and the seller will deny a bid was placed when it is verbal, partly for PR, because you don't want to be seen to keep failing. And then the selling club doesn't want to make out like they're listening to lots of bids. So this is where you might hear third bid, you might hear fourth bid, you might hear fifth bid. And that's actually encouraging because the negotiations are becoming more meaningful to get to that point. And that is why we've got a key week ahead. So it wouldn't remotely surprise me if Chelsea come in under 80 million and then see where the situation lands. But more broadly, I think Chelsea will at some point, if they don't succeed lower, end up around that 80 million mark. And that's the first real test of Leicester's resolve. Fofana wants the move. He's made that clear. Rodgers doesn't want to sell. He's made that clear. So where is the middle ground or the conclusion in this? It's in the Leicester board. And it doesn't really matter what Brendan Rodgers thinks. If the Leicester board see a number that they think is above market value and worth selling now, and I think that number is 85 rather than 80, but we'll see, then at that point, they will sell and Wesley Fofana will be a Chelsea player.
I think that's a lot of money, Ben, personally, for
It's a huge amount
the
of
age
money.
of what he is. I think, and when you look at the De Ligt deal, when Chelsea were linked to him, and I know before Bayern Munich even come in, Chelsea were negotiating with Juventus to try and get this down, and they didn't even want to pay that for him. Do you know what I mean? And to now ultimately put 85 million down for a player that is very talented, very young. I think he's got a lot of going for him. I don't know.
Remember, though, as well, just briefly on that, remember, 85 by number may not be 85 by nature. So that's another thing to factor in, again, coming back to the structure, that if it becomes 80 or 85, Chelsea are not necessarily going to guarantee that 85. And that's a really important point, because if they hit that number with add-on heavy, let's say 10 million, and those add-ons are not that likely, or even 15 million, although that's usually a big ask for add-ons, but it's not unthinkable that they just go big with the number, but it's actually not that high in terms of a guaranteed fee. Then the key question every fan should ask if they think that's overpriced is how likely are the add-ons?
Yeah, no, 100% hear what you're saying on that, to be honest. I don't know. For me as a Chelsea fan, I mean, some Chelsea fans, I feel, maybe looking at this, if we do buy him for that money, is it a panic buy? Because you're looking in that area and we still haven't sorted it out. It's been a long time since we've sort of sorted out the second centre-back to come into the football club. To pay 85 million for a proven Premier League defender who's still young at Leicester, I don't know. I mean, some fans will be happy with it. This is where it's funny, because some fans will be very over the moon about it and love the deal, and some others will feel that we've overpaid. And would Marina do that? You know, if Marina was still in charge, would this be the type of deal that she would have got done? I'm not 100% sure on it. We at the end of the day, we need to get it sorted, and that's for sure. But what does it mean for, again, outgoings in that area? Because you have someone like Ethan Ampadu, who has come back on his loan and is in the team currently at the moment. He's not been given a number. If we do get Fafana, and it looks like we're probably going to throw everything at it to get it done, because it's just assuming what Tuchel and Bowley want, what does it mean for the likes of people like Ampadu? I'm assuming they must be on their way out, right?
Yeah, I think that Chelsea would see Ampadu as somebody that they're willing to let leave. And I know there's some interest from Serie A, particularly Spezia. They're the team that have made the most inquiries about the player, but nothing doing as yet. And we wait and see whether there's any progress on that. And from Chelsea's point of view, they've got the control to wait and see what happens with Fofana before sanctioning anything for Ampadu. And they're in a good position in that respect. I still think that there's an argument as to why with Fofana you would pay the, let's just call it 80 or 85 million when Levi Colwill was right there. And I know there's a big difference in terms of how much football they've played in the Premier League. But by the same token, there's not a single scout out there that I have spoken to at any other rival of Chelsea, not a single one. And in the last week, I must have spoken to at least 10, 7 of which are at Premier League clubs. And every single one of them asked me what I knew about Levi Colwill. And every single one of them said in the build-up to that Cucurella deal, when there was some talk of a permanent deal, that Chelsea would be nuts to sell the player. Every single one of them said that he will be an elite level centre-back. So then with Fofana, it becomes quite interesting because you're signing him and you're playing him, of course. Yet you've got Koulibaly and you've got Silva. So then with Colwill, if you keep the player, give him a chance, then if his progression takes off, as virtually everybody in the game thinks it will, and he becomes a top centre-back, then you suddenly have a scenario where he's competing with Fofana, and one you've brought through and the other is 85 million. And you assume that Fofana has the sort of nod. So then you've got Cucurella can play centre-back, you've got Koulibaly, you've got Silva, you've got Fofana, you've got Colwill. And if he comes back from that loan in a year's time, then it's actually, even though it's a non-urgent point, it's going to struggle, I genuinely think, if he plays a full season on Brighton at loan, if Fofana arrives, to convince him that he's got an integral future at the football club. And that's my only worry with Colwill, that the player, if he does well at Brighton, as he showed at Huddersfield as well, will have even more ambition. And then Fofana's there, and still Koulibaly's there. And maybe Silva starts to play less game time, but you get my point that there's two young players competing probably for the same singular spot. And which one's going to get picked? It's going to be the one with the 85 million price tag that Chelsea have invested in for the next decade. So I feel for Colwill. Brighton's a great move for him. Big win for Chelsea that he's only on loan. But I think with Colwill, if Fofana arrives, Chelsea are going to be back in exactly the same position with him in 12 months' time.
Interesting, because I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, I do feel it's a good problem to have. Not from the player's perspective, but as a fan, you want to see players competing, especially when you're at a club like Chelsea competing for their positions. I always think 10, 15 years back when we had that great midfield with Deco, Essie and Lampard, Makalele, Ballack, there were so many top players that were fighting for positions. And I think it's good. And I think if you're coming to a team like Chelsea and you're in the first team and, you've got someone that's as good as you or maybe a bit better and you want to try and prove yourself and you've got the opportunity to do that, then you should want to do that, and if you don't and for example, you don't feel you're going to get enough game time because of it and you decide to go elsewhere, then that's on the player, not on the managers. And I think that's where we get a little bit mixed up on from what we read. And when I look at the Broa thing, for example, when he left off pre-season and came back here, he was talking about going to West Ham and people saying, why are we letting him go? We've only got Havertz. It makes no sense. But, and then you hear Tuchel come out saying, well, I want the player to stay. And then you've got Broa on the other hand thinking of his game time, for example, and whatever. So I think it's going to be very hard to sort of balance the youth with what we currently have at the moment. You're right with Fofana. You spend that kind of money, you're going to play him. But ultimately, I think when you look at the long run, I think Chelsea are looking at the long run. And Thiago Silva won't be around, I don't think, next year. Koulibaly may be a couple good seasons in him, and he'll probably sort of finish off soon. So, it all depends on the system as well and what we do moving forward. But
I do take the point, by the way, that one would be left and one would be right, specifically with Colwill and Fofana. That's a good point to make. But Cucurella, left-sided centre-back competition. Vardy unlikely in this window being linked. Again, more competition. I think my point is more that in the current formation, you can have Colwill one side, Fofana the other. So you wouldn't see them as fighting. In a different formation, there would still be a preference for one player to be on the left side of centre-back and one to be on the right side of centre-back. But who knows, depending on the tactics. And Fafana, by the way, has been working on both feet. That's another really important point to make. So don't just judge him on how he's used at Leicester City. One of the reasons why Fafana thinks that he can be a world-class centre-back is because he's developing his all-round game, including trying to develop a way of playing on both sides. So who knows how that will pan out. But it's more that Colwill, if he sees big spending when he thinks he's ready for an opportunity, what kind of message does that send? And with Cucurella, that's also evident. So Cucurella comes in as cover for, let's say, Chilwell. Very impressive, by the way, in his cameo in the first game of the season. If he comes in and is a left back, then you say back up to Chilwell for now. And that's good because Chilwell's come back from a long-term injury. If he plays on the left-hand side of centre-back and that ends up being regular, then Colwell's there sitting at Brighton thinking, well, okay, then you've got another player that's ahead of me in the pecking order. So it's about Chelsea, again, investing in their young talent and showing a clear pathway. Otherwise, Colwill will be back in 12 months to exactly where he was. And it's great to see Gallagher get a few minutes, even though it was a cameo and he's back in the setup. It's great to see Broja brought on. So there is that commitment to using them as players that have that pathway from being loaned out, being brought back, playing. And it remains to be seen whether Colwill gets that opportunity. But I guarantee you, if he sets the world on fire at Brighton and Chelsea don't slot him into the starting lineup in 12 months' time, he will want a move away.
Let's see how that entails as well. Over 1,100 of you guys here. Make sure that we're smashing them likes, guys. Let's get this over 200 likes on Chelsea Fan TV and GNA TV as well, please. Subscribe if you're new as well. Follow Ben Jacobs on Twitter as well. And he's got his at there as CBS Sports, Galazzo as well, which you can check out as well. So make sure you check that out as well. Right, I'm getting a lot of people in the chat asking me about De Jong. De Jong. That's what I'm hearing a lot of at the moment. Mr. Ornstein brought out something quite interesting today and around the De Jong news. So I want to get your thoughts on it, Ben, and where you stand with it and what you feel of it. But what Ornstein's basically said is that Chelsea are ready to pay the full transfer fee and cover Frenkie de Jong's current deferred salary with Barcelona as well. Obviously, we're being told that he wants to stay. Xavi's supposedly come out and given de Jong his thoughts as how important he is as well. But it seems like Chelsea is starting to turn the heat up a bit this week on it. Where do we stand with de Jong to Chelsea?
Chelsea have always been cautiously optimistic on De Jong, but it all depends on Barcelona. I've said this many times. I've reported it throughout the summer, really, that until Barcelona explicitly tell De Jong that he's surplus to requirements, the player's position is he wants to stay at the football club and he'll either fight to continue on his current wages or eventually be persuaded to take a pay cut. But what gives Chelsea optimism is that Barcelona are starting to effectively drive De Jong out of the football club. And the information that the excellent David Ornstein put out in his exclusive article shows that the club's board have threatened legal action. And they believe that under the old Barcelona board, the extension was carried out in a criminal way. So they think they can default the contract and return him onto his wages that he previously earned before the extension. Now, people might read that as bad news, because if they obviously do that, then De Jong would be forced into a pay cut through legal action and would stay at Barcelona. But that's not what this is about, as I understand it. And I spent a week with Barcelona in New York talking to various sources at the football club, including for CBS, an exclusive interview with Joan Laporta. And my sense is that this is all about PR, of making Frenkie de Jong feel unwelcome at the football club. I don't think Barcelona will proceed with any legal action. If they do, there'll be a countersuit in the snap of the fingers where De Jong asks for his deferred wages. So it's not going to get to the point where lawyers decide the future of Frenkie de Jong, but it's all about a threat. And then you suddenly offer a more amicable solution of, we can either take legal action or you can decide to take the pay cut. We can take legal action or you can decide to leave the football club. And that's where we're at the moment. And I think this is the first step to Barcelona forcing Frenkie de Jong out of the football club. Why? Because they want Bernardo Silva and will make an offer. And then if De Jong is to be converted into a centre-back, day on day, they've got Jules Koundé. So they don't want him at the football club. There's still a question mark over whether they can register all of their players. And the transfer fee would be welcome as well. And that's what gives Chelsea the optimism. But there is a difference between Manchester United and Chelsea. Manchester United have got deal in place, but no player buy-in. Chelsea are optimistic of agreeing a fee, and essentially there won't be much difference between the two clubs. The personal terms will be the same, which means that if De Jong joins, he'll be one, if not the highest earner at Chelsea Football Club. And Chelsea, like Manchester United, will cover the deferred wages as well. So it's pretty much like for like offers, but Manchester United are ahead in a fixed negotiation, and Chelsea, knowing what that fixed negotiation is, give or take, are obviously very confident of getting to a number. But they won't move until De Jong tells them that he will join. Otherwise, they feel they're wasting their time and getting sucked into a saga. So they've learned from Manchester United's lessons. And the situation at the moment, and it's going to change very quickly, is that Chelsea believe De Jong would prefer a move to Stamford Bridge over Old Trafford. And I think I was the first to report that.
Yeah.
But they are reticent of being messed around by both De Jong and or Barcelona. And it's getting that clarity that the player will move that will escalate this from a optimism to a formal bid. And that could happen very quickly because all it takes is the player to realize that he is unwelcome. Barcelona must tell him, though, explicitly to his face. And that's the challenge with dealing with Barcelona, that Joan Laporta says one thing in public, one thing in private. He acts one way with media, he acts a different way with the clubs. Laporta said to me in our exclusive interview that he will respect De Jong's contract. Now, David's excellent story comes out and says they're threatening legal action. So they're not respecting the contract. They're trying to find a legal loophole in the contract. And of course, it's more than coincidental. If Barcelona thought that there was criminality around a contract, then they wouldn't have been paying De Jong and they would have challenged this earlier. But shock horror, they're challenging it now because they need the fee and the squad space at the moment. So this is all down to a narrative of De Jong wouldn't accept a pay cut. His original contract was criminal anyway. We had no choice but to sell him. We told him to leave. Or it's down to a De Jong, we're putting pressure on you to amicably accept a salary cut. And right now, it's 50-50 because De Jong genuinely doesn't know what he wants to do. But if he's to leave, then I do genuinely believe from talking to sources, particularly sources close to the player and Barcelona Football Club when I was out with them for around about a week in New York. My belief, as I've consistently reported, is that he would prefer the move to Chelsea over Manchester United. And the reason for that is because he didn't have a bad relationship with Ten Hag previously, but it was nothing spectacular either. So he's actually looking at, in a like-for-like wage and with deferred wages being paid by both clubs, he's essentially picking between Tuchel and Ten Hag and between Europa League and Champions League football and between London and Manchester. And it's the Champions League and the London part that are particularly of appeal to him over that move to Old Trafford. As I understand it, both clubs will tell you they're confident. Barcelona will tell you he's staying. And that's what makes this whole saga so crazy.
I think he's a top player. What was the fee for him at the moment? Was it 85 million euros? Was it they're looking for?
It's going to be 65 million euros as the guaranteed give or take. And then the understanding I have is that you might land him at Chelsea for fractionally cheaper than the Manchester United deal if the add-ons are more preferable and the payment structure is stronger. So I think it'll be a minimum all-in price of 80 million euros. And if you go by the Manchester United price, it's 85 million euros.
Interesting. Interesting stuff. We'll have to wait and see. And I just feel that something's brewing. Something's going to happen this week at Chelsea, whether it's for good or bad. Whether it's Fafana, whether it's De Jong, whether it's a striker. I see a lot of people talking about Memphis Depay in there as well as another option that potentially could be for Chelsea. Just a quick one on that. Could that really be an option for Chelsea, Memphis Depay?
I think it's way less likely Depay to Chelsea. I know that some say he's come up in conversation, but remember, this is a very interesting dynamic between the highly experienced Laporta and the brand new Todd Boehly. And Boehly is a tough negotiator, but he can be very soft and amenable, and he's entering into a new market. And it's quite funny when people say that Boehly is really keen on a player, because Boehly is empowered by Tuchel. He doesn't know a great deal about any of these players, but much like a politician, he's briefed. And let's not forget that Marina is still there as needed. Bruce Buck is still a senior advisor. The football department is still functional. Where Chelsea fall down, by the way, is that their level of basic data under Abramovich is shocking compared to other top football clubs. And that's what they'll be trying to improve. When I talk to other scouts, they know everything about Chelsea. They know the opposition moves. They've got dossiers and briefs left, right, and centre. Where's the data beyond the very, very basics that Boehly and his team have inherited? It's lacking. And Boehly knows that because he sees it day on day through his role with the LA Dodgers. So he's in the dark comparative to equivalents at other football clubs. But what he is given is the information he needs. So he's not walking in there clueless. He's been given everything he needs, but he's being given it. rather than it being there in his head. Whereas Marina, I think, just had all of this to hand. So if you're then at a meal with Todd Boehly and Laporta talking about players, then Laporta will try his luck. Of course, he'll offer Boehly everyone under the sun, and then Boehly will have to go back and say, well, they said this guy, Memphis Depay. Do you want him? Do you not want him? What do you think of him? Do we have any data on him? What does the football department think? So it's normal that areas are being discussed at this stage. And there's so many names linked with Chelsea because the selling clubs try their luck because they know that Todd Boehly wants to get business done quickly and they can see the volume that Chelsea need. But I don't think there's a great deal with Memphis Depay and Chelsea at this point, other than the fact that he has been name dropped in conversations. And that is, again, down to the fact that when he's name dropped over a meal in Spain, Boehly can't just turn around and say no, because he has to go to his manager and he has to go to his football department first. And that is just the nature of a brand new relationship.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. We'll have to see how it all entails at a later stage. Ben, I know you've got to go. It's 2:05 anyway, so I'll make sure that I let you go. I'm going to continue on for a little bit more with the viewers as well. Just wanted to see if there's any final thoughts for yourself before shooting off. Let people know where they can find you as well, Ben, as well.
Yeah, I will. Kepa is the final thoughts. Just one to watch. Obviously, a little bit of a roadblock with Napoli, and they are exploring other options, Keylor Navas specifically. And I'm only giving you my personal opinion, nothing to do with sources, because we're at the beginning of the week and I will go back to sources and ask them. But I don't understand why, given the Kasper Schmeichel situation, if Chelsea were to go and genuinely try and get a deal with Leicester City, why they wouldn't offer money plus Kepa. And I think that as a Leicester fan, I would take Kepa all day long above Danny Ward, and then you still get a big chunk of money. So I don't want to falsely create a headline there. I've not heard anything about Leicester moving, but that would be my final thought, that as a fan, rather than a journalist, taking off my professional opinion, I would be taking whatever you value Kepa at on a permanent deal, plus whatever cash is left. And I would see that as a very good deal if the total was 85 million or more, because Danny Ward, I'm not so sure on. And then finding me, CBS Sports Golasso, you can see the handle on the screen. So follow our handles, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We've actually on Thursday at 11 o'clock. So it'll probably go out about 2 p.m. Got a big top secret Chelsea interview incoming that will reveal a whole lot more about this new Chelsea era. So keep an eye out on that. It will be an exclusive interview done by myself at 11, pre-recorded, and it will be very interesting to see the insight and perspective given from that interview. So a one to watch this week from me and CBS, and I'll have more details later in the week. And then personal handles at JacobsBen on Twitter. And if you want dog photos rather than too much transfer gossip, then Ben David Jacobs on Instagram. But yeah, congratulations to Chelsea on their first win of the season. It wasn't pretty at times, but bad record at Goodison, so you're taking that all day long. And good luck this weekend in your next game.
Oh, Spurs, isn't it? So that'll be an interesting one at home. So we'll be looking forward to it. Ben, thank you very much, mate, for being with us. Well, make sure you send me that link to that as well. I want to see that at 11 o'clock with the Chelsea Scout thing as well. But yeah, thank you very much, and we'll see you again on the show very soon.
Look forward to it. All the best, everyone. Have a good week.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. There you go, guys. Ben Jacobs with the Chelsea news. Interesting stuff, hey? Obviously, we've got De Jong in. We've got Fafana in. We asked him about Timo Werner. We spoke about other options in the forward line. He still seems to think Wilfried Zaha may be an option for Chelsea as well. Memphis Depay, not as much. Aubameyang on a loan was another one that he mentioned as well. Aubameyang on a loan, which is interesting stuff. I've just got this feeling it's going to be a real interesting telling week for Chelsea. I think you'll start seeing solid grounds on the Fafana thing. I think that's going to split differences of opinion, especially if we go in for around 85 million. And more than ever, the big news around De Jong, because De Jong is a player that everyone's just unsure on at the moment. Obviously, from what we've been told, Chelsea are looking at the player. Chelsea are interested in the player, that are starting to heat up with their movements for him. Obviously, if you heard from Ben Jacobs, he had the exclusive report with Laporta He said in the exclusive report that Laporta said that he wants to obviously appreciate De Jong's contract as well. So there's a lot of things that I still think up in the air with Barcelona. I think they've got a lot of problems financially, and I think that they do have to sell players. You've got to think they want Bernardo Silva at the football club as well. On top of that, Ormstein came out with this earlier today as well, which was interesting stuff, talking about the De Jong saga as well. Let's go back into it. Here it is, Frenkie de Jong, which is here. His preference is to stay at Barcelona, but if he goes, no decision yet on the club. Man United pursuing deal since the green fee. Chelsea also pushing hard. Indications are they'd pay a fee plus the salary debt if they formalise interest. Ben Jacobs has said on the show today that he feels that De Jong, from his sources and sources close to the player, if he was to leave Barcelona, that he feels that Chelsea would be the preferred team as well. So lots and lots and lots to look forward to moving forward into that saga. What I'll do is for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to leave at 2:30, so I'll give you 20 minutes to come on and have your say in the chat. Give me your thoughts and opinions on the news that you heard from Ben himself. How you feel about the De Jong news, the Fofana news as well. Are Chelsea going to bid the 85 mil? And ultimately, like Ben said as well, which was interesting, is the structure. The structure is important in all of this. How Chelsea structure the deal, how long they do it. Obviously, we've seen us do it over 6-year contracts as well. It's going to be interesting to see what we do moving forward with this. But the De Jong one's the real interesting one for me, So we'll have to see what happens. Dinishan, what you saying, mate?
Hey, Jam, how are you, bro?
I'm all right. How are you, my man?
I'm very good, man. I'm very good. We have a win against Everton. I was very happy because some people, I understand it was first game, but seeing us winning at Goodison Park, it's great because the same game, if we play in like October or November, we can lose, even though we are in a very good winning pattern. Because we have seen that, we've been winning all games, and then Everton, we lost. So I'll take 3 points, and then we move. Based on the transfer, because when I saw the game against Everton, that's when I realized that we need De Jong. Before I was like, I don't know why we're gonna pay so much for De Jong. But after that game, I realized that when people were saying Kante is mostly finished, J5 cannot defend, or when you press J5, he's just stressed. It makes sense because when you look at the Everton game, J5 he could have made passes to Sterling. Sterling was through like 3-4 times, and J5 just keep passing sideways. And that's where I'm like, we need someone like a De Jong who can make direct passes. Once you get the ball, just look forward. Yes, you can make sideways sometimes, but you also need to look forward. So I think for me, it's very crucial. As Fofana is crucial, I think De Jong is crucial. I think we need to get De Jong so we can play with a double like pivot of Kovacic and De Jong. When we need to attack, we need to play an attacking pivot. And if we need to defend, then you can play Kante. But if we need to attack, we need that pivot, I think. So it's very crucial that we get both Fofana, because we could see that Aspilicueta, when he was playing right center back, they were targeting him. And that's where I realized that. So whatever Tuchel is asking for, he knows what he's asking for. Because if you look at Koulibaly, if you look at Cucurella, if you look at Sterling, those players help us win against Everton. And Mendy. Mendy made some good save. But whatever signings that Tuchel asked for, you could see why he's asking for them. So we just need to back him, man. We just need to back Tuchel and see what happens. That's very crucial.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, mate. It's lots. I think backing is important. I think we need to show the manager that, look, I think he's happy with what he's got at the moment, but I still feel that he knows he needs more. And ultimately, it's just, well, do we get it all done in this window? Do we have to wait till the next window? But I do still feel we're going to get the centre back area sorted and the forward line sorted as well. Frankie, what are you saying, mate?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate.
Yeah, I just think that we should walk away from the Fofana deal because it's just too much money, man. This 80 million and that. Like, I just think we were better off developing Chalobah than spending 80 million on Fofana. I'd rather spend that 80 million on a winger like Sane or something. it's just way better than spending on Fofana, even though Fofana is a great player. That's just my opinion. And on the Frenkie deal, I think we should get him really, because I feel like he complements our system well. He'd work well with with Kante, Kovacic, and Frenkie. So I feel like we need to get him. He's good at passing. He's good at switching off play. He can dribble. He's not the best defensively, but I feel like he could do a job. So I'm all in for the Frenkie deal, but for Fofana, I'm not pretty.
What
I'm
about
not
the
sure.
forward line? What about the forward line? How do you feel about the forward line?
Yeah, we probably need 2 forwards. I'd get Depay personally, because I feel like he's good technically, and he'd link up well with Sterling. And then I don't know to get on the other side. Just someone that's creative, basically. I don't know, someone like Zaha, maybe, someone like that.
Fair enough. Zaha's an interesting one, because I feel like I feel people sort of mixed with their feelings with that, whether it's a good buy now. Zaha, I feel, has got one more chance at playing at a top team club. I just don't know whether at Chelsea it could work. Him and Sterling, maybe, because they're very direct. I'm not too sure, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, Tobago, what are you saying? You're muted, Tobago. Tobago. He's not there. Fair enough. Go back to you, Dennis. What's your thoughts on Zaha to Chelsea?
I like Zaha. I think Zaha is very direct. Because he played in Crystal Palace, so he never really got good players like Zaha. I think in a good team you will see his wolf. But for me, like Timo Werner's gone. I think Ziyech will probably be gone, so we can bring one more attackers. Because as a striker, I want to give Broha a chance. I don't know. My heart keeps saying I think because when Broha came in against Everton, you could see that he was hungry. You could see that he can hold the ball. I was shocked at how quick he was, because I think I saw one transition where he was running. He kind of reminds me of Diego Costa a little bit. But we do need a right winger who can play as a false 9. So like a Depay. I will take a Depay, because I think Depay can play as a false 9. He also can score goals. Because if you bring too many attackers, there will be a disrupt. Because we saw with Ziyech, Timo Werner, even Pulisic now is on the bench. Because Tuchel play back free, so there's gonna have only three attackers, and I know he will always play Mount. Even Mount has a okay game, but even though I think Mount is very hard to drop Mount. Havertz, you can drop him. I think you would drop him for Broha. But for Mount, I don't think he would drop in. So technically, Sterling will play, Mount will play. So only one more attacker in front. So if you bring 2 more attackers, then there might be a disrupt. So I think bring Depay and then bring Depay, bring De Jong, and I will get Fofana. I will get him, because I think Chalobah is very good, but sometimes I think Tuchel not trust him, but I think Tuchel knows that he sometimes has very lot of mistakes with Chalobah. If Tuchel wants Fofana, then go get him. So because every signing that Tuchel asks for works. So I don't care. I don't care about the money. So if Boli promised 6 or 7 signings, then go for it, man. Because once we get a sporting director, it changes. We're not gonna buy so many players like that after the next window. So if we can do it, just do it, man. Just do it now.
Hey, mate. Hey, RIP FIFA. What are you saying, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I was just gonna touch up on Fafana. I think Chelsea fans are maybe a bit too nervous on the price, but we have to be realistic. And apparently, Man City bid 90 million for Gvardiol, and that got immediately turned down. So, I mean, we're looking at a player like Fafana, bearing in mind there's not many young centre backs on the market here. I don't think we're really getting scammed if we do get him for like 80-ish million. I think 90 is where I start going, okay, we're getting a bit too high. But also De Ligt went for 68 million, and he's a few years older than Fafana, and he's not Premier League proven. I don't think Fafana's the end of the world again. I think he'll be a good signing for money. We're getting him, and fucking Maguire went for 80 million, so could be a lot worse if I'm being honest. So yeah. And also think if Tuchel wants him that badly, he's going to Boli, get me this player for this amount of money. I trust Tuchel, especially in defence. He's turned Rudiger into a great player, Christian into a good player, Thiago Silva to an even better player. He's done amazing with our defenders, so I fully trust him in the Fafana signing. And I got no doubts in my mind he'll succeed.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's going to divide opinion for 100%,
Yeah,
especially in the
definitely
fan
will.
base. Some people feel that it's too much money. Some others feel that it's worth, if Tuchel wants it, when we back it, it's what he wants. I think Fofana's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I think he would suit our system, our style, the way that we play. 85 million is a lot of money, though. For a defender of his age, it is a lot of money. But we're in a position now where you get into the latter end of the market. Teams are wanting to keep players. They're not going to want to lose some of their prized assets right at the beginning of seasons. This is where it becomes hard, and ultimately, have we been forced into having to just buy because we need? Potentially? Could we wait a season? Maybe with Chalobah, some people feel Chalobah might be good enough, but ultimately, I just don't think we have the depth there, especially now Christensen and Rudiger have dumped us anyway. So it's a tough one. It really is a tough one. BLT, what you saying, mate?
Yes, man. Yes. Do you know what? Yeah. I hear the Fafana talk, and he's quality. But again, he's not had 50 games in Prem to be worth 85 million. He's not had, and that's over like a couple of 2 seasons. That he hasn't even hit 50 games, and to drop 85 mil will just be will show the wrong messages throughout the whole club, to be honest. Going from the youth players will be seeing that going, what's the point of me being here if I'm not going to get a look in? I'm just going to be overlooked. I might as well go to a Southampton or a team like this, play a few games, and next I'm going to be worth 60, 70 because I'm good enough.
Yeah.
But again, it's just the Prem proven again. We're not the players that we got out on loan last season of all. I think it was only Billy Gilmore that didn't really have that much of an impact, but the rest, they all had a good impact. Livramento was playing class up until he got a bad injury. Brozier, top goal scorer for Southampton, they were doing good. But again, we keep doing this thing. I think we've done it for years now. Even Tomori, look what he's just gone and won the league in AC Milan. We're getting rid of the wrong players and getting rid and then spending big. It's not the one. And I think it's showing the wrong messages throughout Chelsea. And he is a good player, Fofana, but I think for now it's like he's not a crucial player that we're missing.
Yeah, I mean, then again, this is what I'm saying. It's divided from opinion, isn't it? Like, I get what you're saying. I think if you look at the beginning of the transfer market when we lost Christensen and Rudiger, I think we could all agree that we were sitting here saying that we need 2 defenders, right? 2 defenders is something we need to do. We go and buy. We've gone and bought Koulibaly, who I thought was a great deal for what we got him for as well. Great move. And then we tried Koundé, when ultimately probably Koundé should have been our first in, but we went for Ake instead. And I just think maybe that we had our fingers in the pie, too many pies that maybe disrupted the ideas of bringing other players like Koundé. Because if we just got Koundé straight on the back of the sanctions being cleared, I think he would have come Chelsea only. I don't think Barcelona would have even entertained it at that point. I think where we left it so long, when we went to Ake, we went to De Ligt, we were talking, Fofana weren't even in the talks at this point. It's, I don't blame football clubs for selling players for what they're selling them at this point, because it's not like we've big interest in the player, straight from the beginning of the window. So I think, we do need another, for me, I still feel that we do need another centre back. I don't think Azpilicueta is someone we should be relying on. I want him on rotation.
What about Cucurella though? Wasn't he been saying that he can play the wing back role, but he can also fill into that centre back? Is it the left centre back?
He can do, but he can do. But ultimately, the issue that you find yourself with that is that we play 50 games a season. You lose Ben Chilwell because he gets injured again for a couple months, and then Cucurella is there. He ultimately, what I'm saying is he fills into the wing back, but then you don't have a player to play in that central back area if you lose Thiago Silva, for example. So what I'm saying is the depth is not there. You know what I mean? That's why we need players in that position. I know we have Chalobah and we have who else we got in them positions, and Ampadu at the moment and whatever, but I don't think Ampadu is going to be around for long, personally, especially if we start Fafana. So it's a tough one for us,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like definitely. Again, I think getting rid of Levi Colwill, I think he could have been a filler. Like, he would have been a good filler to have that in. But we've got rid of him. I think that would have been that's the wrong one that we got rid of to Brighton. I think we could have looked at Ampadu or someone like that, but to get rid of Levi was like.
Well, we did need Cucurella, and Brighton were being very stubborn, saying, give us Cobble, we're not giving you Cucurella. So I think to get him on a loan, I'm happy with. But I think also, just for me, where I'm thinking here is with Fafana, I know it's going to cost it, and I do think he's a little bit overpaying, but I'm happy that only because I think when we have defenders like Thiago Silva and Koulibaly, I know Koulibaly's going to be here for a few more years, but I don't think Thiago Silva will. And I think if we can get Fafana in this season and not next season, and he can learn and be mentored by a player like Thiago Silva and kind of build up to take his role, I think that's the perfect time to bring him in. And going on to the 50 Premier League appearances, he did have a horrible leg-breaking injury, which is why he hasn't played as much.
Question. Would you not rather spend that half of that money and get a wing-back and then just buy another centre-back next season when we have a sporting director when, wouldn't that be better?
I think it's a bit risky because our defence added up to the age of 100. That's up. I think Tuchel made it clear that Koulibaly, Aspi, and Thiago is his main back three, but they're not going to be able to. I think Koulibaly probably will, but I don't think the other two are going to be able to play every game of the season. And I do think we got the money to go and get another attacker like Zaha and get a defender and get De Jong. So the reports are saying we're good in financial fair play. So I'm not too worried.
Thank you. What are you doing, mate? What are you doing? You're moving your phone or something? I feel what I can hear is crackling. Yeah, sorry, whoever was talking. That was irritating me. That noise. that noise. But yeah, what was you saying?
I was just saying that. I was just saying I don't think we're struggling financially. I don't need to worry about anything. I think we can comfortably get Fafana, get De Jong, and maybe not. We won't be able to get like a Leao as an attack, but I think we could comfortably get a Zaha or a Aubameyang. So like it can just be a gap year signing just to fit in for a couple of years, maybe one and next year get another attacker. So I'm not too worried about the attack. I do also think we haven't had a midfielder that creates for our attack in years. Like, when was the last time one of our midfielders got a good assist or a good goal? The last time I remember a good goal was against Liverpool when Kovacic did that screamer. I don't think our midfield is very attacking minded, which obviously doesn't help. And Cucurella did also help our attack a lot when he came on. We nearly got that goal when he whipped it into Sterling. So I think I think maybe the wing backs will also provide. Maybe De Jong could help the attack a lot more because Mount even went dry that game, and we know Mount's not a bad player; he's world class.
Yeah,
I just think we need more in. I think from the forward line, we need to create. We need another Sterling. Basically, we need someone that can create, dribble, be direct, and contribute to goals as well. I don't think we're going to get a number 9. I mean, if we do, it's probably going to be someone like an Aubameyang or someone like that. But other than that, it's a very limited market at the moment for strikers. So when you look at where we can go with this, Zaha on the back of it, as much as a lot of people don't rate him, I'm not. He's a massive fan. Would he be better in a team where he's surrounded by players that are on par rather than being? Because you look at the Palace team, he's always been like that man, isn't he? The one that has to step up and be the guy. But at Chelsea, he won't have that as much. Ultimately, we will need his ability more to break teams down. So getting him behind, stretching teams and creating space for others to be able to be effective. And obviously, he has to score goals himself as well. But I don't know. I think we've got a real tricky decision. I think Bowley and Tuchel have got a tricky decision here because you look at the market, especially from the forward lines, and unless you're going to spend hundreds of millions to try and force players out of their teams, there's not much available, other than Aubameyang, for example, if he's willing to go, or a Depay, who I don't really want to see, you know what I mean? So, and then you start looking at, I heard Saint Maximum as an option. I'm not a massive fan of him as well. Some people are, some people ain't. Like, it becomes a little bit like we just clocking. Do you know what I mean? We just who can we get? Who wants to come? Do you want to come? Come. You can dribble. You can dribble. Come.
That football manager. Do you know when your scout gives you recommendations, just throws out loads of names? Yeah, it's not the one. It's not the one,
is it?
On Saturday, like you can even see it with the Chelsea fans. It was the ball will go. I feel like we're looking at the wrong area. We need a midfielder. We definitely need a creative midfielder. The ball was just going literally side. Then you see an opening from Sterling making a good run, and then it's gone side again, you're just groaning because it's just like, what are we doing? Every time it's just side to side. It's predictable. Like the football was just so predictable,
But
and we
the
all
thing
we
that
need is a midfielder.
saying, like in the Everton game, because if you look at Tuchel's interview after the game, he did say that Chilwell was not 100% fit, and he said that Reece James has not full fitness. So when you look at Mount and Havertz in that game against Everton, they were playing on the wings, and I was like, why is Mount playing on the wings? Because even when you play back three, Mount always comes in the middle as a 10, but he was playing on the wings because Reece James and Chilwell was not running the lane. So when he put Loftus-Cheek and Cucurella, we would look better because Loftus-Cheek was running as crazy and Cucurella was just a beast. He was just running. And then Broha and whoever was playing up front, they could play because the wing backs was running. So I believe in the next few games, once Reece James get full fitness and Cucurella is playing, you will see more movement. But for me, we need to get one more defender because if Thiago Silva, if Silva gets injured in that game against Everton, Silva did everything for us. Interception. He was commanding. Mendy was making mistakes. He covered Mendy. If Silva gets injured, Koulibaly was very good. For his first game, I think Koulibaly, it took around 15 minutes to realize how Premier League was. But Silva was, for me, when I look at Silva, I'm like, is there any defender like him? You know, I'm like, he's like 37 and he's crazy. But I'm scared that he might get a hamstring because we cannot overplay Silva like that because we have to understand, you know, he's a human. He will get down. And if he go down, we will need, I think Koulibaly can lead, but we need someone.
This is why ultimately I think the Fofana deal was being pushed so much by Chelsea, because when you think about Thiago Silva in his age and how much football he's going to be asked to play, there's always that opportunity or chance that he may get an injury. And if he does get an injury, we have Koulibaly, we have Azpilicueta, we have Chalobah, and we have Cucurella, right? You want to play a back three, you could play Chalobah on the right, Koulibaly middle, and Cucurella off the left. Fine, I get that. But if ultimately you wanted to switch into a 4 system, it can't do that without Thiago Silva being there, because I'm not comfortable with Aspi playing there. I'm not comfortable with Chalobah playing in the back 4. I think when you look at Fofana as the player, I think he can do both, 3 and the 4. Because if you've got Fofana, you can play Koulibaly, Fofana, Cucurella, and James as your back 4. If you go into a back 3, we lose Thiago Silva, you can play Fofana as maybe the focal point in the middle, Koulibaly off the right, and Cucurella off the left. Do you know what I mean? Like, it gives you just, it's the versatility as to why I think we sign most of the players that we're signing this season. And I think that's why you'll probably see us sign him, to be honest.
Yeah, I do think Leicester also know they're a hard club to buy from, but also Leicester know how desperate we are for an attacker. And not a defender. So,
yeah.
Forgot about Malang Sarr.
Yeah, Malang Sarr. There now.
He's gone. He went to that French club, didn't he? Monaco, was it?
Has he gone yet?
He was going down a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, again, the reason why, like the Fofana deal, as much as we need him, again, it will show a wrong message again, because Mark Gehi's literally England international now, was literally with us, gone to Palace, captain of Palace, starting in the Prem, looking really good, and we got rid of him for nothing really. Now we're going to spend 80 million on someone that, don't know, would you?
But if you look at Mark Guehi, he has less pressure at Crystal Palace because that own goal that he scored against Arsenal, if sadly Mark Guehi or Chalobah does something like that against a big game, but you know, sometimes Chelsea fans they tend to overreact, but young players, I feel like, look at Colwell. When I see Brighton so good, Brighton played so well against Man United. So I could see Colwell in Brighton, he would improve a lot because Brighton plays a back 3. We play a back 3. So whoever sent him to loan over there, they knew what they did with Colwell.
Yeah, they've also produced very good defenders like Dunk and White, so it's not like they're a shitty defensive team. I'm actually doing very well in the league. They came 9th and stuff, so it's not like we sent off to a shit team. I think it's a very good loan. But I do also think
we need him though.
I don't know if we need him if we're going to get Fafana, because I do think Tuchel would have planned this then, and I think Fafana is better than Cole, because Cole's very good and I do think he's got a lot of potential, but he he has only had a championship loan. We don't know how good he might be in the Premier League, and to have him as like maybe a starting / like substitution defender would be maybe a bit risky.
That's
So
why
I
we
don't
got
know.
him on loan. And that's
Yeah,
why
exactly.
getting him on the loan move was so important, because if he does have
Yeah.
that great year and we sold him and we got a buyback clause of around 45-50 million, that's still 45-50 million on us. And the fact that we've got a loan agreement with Brian, which means in June 2023 he will be a Chelsea player. If he smashes it this season with Brighton, and I think Brighton are quite a good team. We saw what they did to Man United with him in that team as well. He will learn a lot under Graham Potter. I think the decision to play under Graham Potter is a big thing as well, to improve and enhance his game and actually have a test against some of the biggest teams in the Premier League as well. It'd be really good to see how Cole does. But if he does become a really good player, you know, whose value then goes up to 55-60 million, we've just got a player that's came back on loan from us with this price tag, and ultimately could maybe feature in this team if Thiago Silva moves on and whatever else, you know. So it's a good option for Chelsea to have moving forward. But guys, I do need to finish off because I've got to shoot out. I want to thank everyone for coming on today. Big up to obviously Ben Jacobs for spending most of the time with us, and obviously Dinesh with us, BLT, RIP FIFA as well. It's been a very good show. De Jong, Fafana still outstanding. I've got a feeling that this week's going to be an interesting week for one of the two. We're going to learn more 100% moving forward. But before you leave, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel as well. And in the comment box below, just give us your thoughts and opinions on the show today. Someone's saying look up Pies, but let's have a quick look. What's he done? Let's have a look. Let's have a quick look before I finish. Pies. Chelsea have an obligation to buy for Malang Sarr at 15 million euros if conditions are met. That's from David Ormsteen, by the way. So there you go. Malang Sarr has a medical with Monaco today. It's a loan with the option to buy for Monaco. The option to buy is a 15 million euro condition on there as well. But he has to have high appearances, basically, which means they've got to play him for us to alleviate that amount of money. So, yeah, there you go, guys. A little bit of news there on that. But other than that, enjoy the rest of your day. I will be back again soon at some point. And see you in a bit. Take care.
Have a good one. Bye.